analysts to provide witnesses for the committee on those studies. So, Mr. Cooper, were you on this? Or
just I want to move a motion.
Okay, I'll come back to you. We're on this right now. Mr. Villemure, on the calendar, please. Go ahead.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Bien évidemment.
Thank you. Both studies are very important to me. Disinformation and misinformation tie in to everything that we see with electoral interference. Now, the study on the Winnipeg lab, I think that it is becoming a priority over the other study, even though they're both very ethical to look at, but I think I would focus on the Winnipeg lab one first. I need to mention as well that May 9th, we have the Privacy Commissioner who will be coming on May 9th.
You prefer that we start with the Winnipeg lab study, correct?
Oui, Monsieur le Président.
Any other discussion on that? And again, from a scheduling standpoint, we want to make sure that the analyst and the clerk are in a position to succeed. I think I saw Mr. Fisher's hand up. Go ahead, Mr. Fisher.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And our preference would be to study the misinformation ASAP if possible.
Okay. So we have converging views here on where we need to go. Any other discussion on this from any other party? Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I was just going to express that, the misinformation study that I think, at least on this side, we were all eager to get to. Perhaps there's a way to, if we, instead of choosing one or the other, mixing the two up and doing one meeting of one and one meeting of the other, or something like that, so we can actually cover both.
Okay. Monsieur Villemure, encore, s'il vous plaît?
Oui, ben,
To respond to my colleague, we've done this a couple times, and both studies are very important to me. But I find that it was more difficult for us to go from one to the other, and it's more difficult for the analysts as well. So that's why it's a very difficult choice, but I would maintain my choice to examine the Winnipeg lab first. I appreciate your suggestion, and you weren't here at the time, but these topics can be heavy, and I find it very difficult to move from one to the other week in, week out. Thank you, Mr. Villemure.
The committee as well. Not only do we have the draft report on that we're dealing with today, but we'll also be dealing with the information tool report as well. So that might leave us a little less time going forward as well. So my preference, frankly, is to do one over the other. Whatever that study is can be determined by the committee, and certainly we'll deal with that. I don't expect that we're going to have a draft report on either one of these studies done before the summer. This may take us well into the fall. So go ahead, Mr. Baines, and then Mr. Green on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to note that, considering that the Winnipeg Labs study is being done already in another committee, it would give us an opportunity as the only committee studying misinformation and disinformation and the very important work that needs to be done there. So my preference is that we do the misinformation, disinformation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Baines. Mr. Green.
Thank you. I'm wondering, just in terms, if I recall, the motion that Mr. Villemure put forward was for 3 meetings. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep. Both of them were for 3 meetings, Mr. Green.
Both of them were for 3 meetings, and the Winnipeg lab study at the Canada-China is scheduled for how many meetings? We know.
Go ahead. 3 meetings? Yeah. Not this one, but the one at Canada-China. Oh. Yeah, I don't. Mr. Villemure, you're sitting on that committee, correct?
Yeah, I'm subbing on that committee, and this is an open-end motion.
Okay, so there's no definitive timeline, no number of days. It sounds like it could go on.
Yeah, and they can call witnesses as they wish.
Okay. Okay, merci, Mr. Villemure.
This is what I would say from, just a strategic point of view. I happen to think that allowing that study to happen would actually give us a lot more context for questioning, for filling in the gaps, for cross-examination. It's a process that's been going on for quite some time. So in terms of the urgency of whether or not it's next week or 3 weeks from now, doesn't seem to be a burning question, which is why I never supported the 106 for that reason. I think it's important. I'm not sure that strategically for us as a committee, we would get as much out of it studying it concurrently with the other committee, when I have found in my position in opposition it quite useful to refer to the Hansards and testimony of ministers and the evidence provided by people from other committees to be able to provide a more adequate cross-examination. If I had the privilege of sitting on both committees, it wouldn't matter to me, but I don't. And so for that reason, I would say that we should probably prioritize the misinformation, disinformation, see what happens on the Canada-China. At least they would have another couple of weeks of testimony provided there, because I'm of the opinion the more that's on the record officially, the better for us. And I'm sure members in opposition could appreciate the ways in which people tend to get their stories tangled up over time. So I would much rather have them do their full testimony there and then have their testimony to reference in our own lines of questioning when it comes to that point. So that would be the only reason why I would support the misinformation, disinformation first, is simply one of kind of strategic and logical sequence. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Green. Monsieur Villemure, encore, s'il vous plaît.
Merci, je trouve.
Thank you. I find Mr. Green's position very interesting. I'd like to start by saying it's true that the Winnipeg lab matter is important but not urgent. I agree entirely with what my colleague has said, but I would need some clarification. Last time, we talked about the access to information aspect that we are experts in, and not knowing whether or not it would be possible, I had asked that portion be sent from Canada, China to us so that we don't redouble efforts. And as being an expert in the field, I don't know if we could ask them to transfer that part of the motion to us. It would allow us to see if there's any contradictions. But of course, I will go with the will of the committee. But if we put this to the fall, it's a little bit too far. That's a significant concern that I have.
Monsieur Villemure, just for clarification, we cannot compel Canada, China to send us information. That's something that obviously we'd have to be following. The thing that I'm looking for right now is just an issue of priority. Mr. Green, I see your hand up on the topic. Go ahead.
Yeah, I understood if it's 3 meetings. We're just in April now. I'm not suggesting that this would go to the fall.
Yeah.
I'm suggesting we would do a week and a half of this, and then we would get on to it.
So,
or even if it was 2 or 3 weeks, like we have until June and soon.
So when I
talking about an 8-week stretch.
Yeah, when I talked about referring it to the fall, perhaps the report and the drafting of that report might happen in the fall. I see us in a situation where we're going to end up dealing with these 2 issues. I just needed to know which one was first and which one was second. So we could, if we wanted to, start on April 30th on either one of these. Continue again on the 2nd, and then the 7th of May as well. So that would take care of 3 meetings on either this one or the other one. So I just need direction from committee. I don't think we have consensus at this point, but I'm looking to get some consensus. If you want me to do the misinformation study on those 3 dates that I just proposed, and then come back on the 21st, 23rd, and 28th of May with the Winnipeg lab study, we could do that if you wanted to. So, are you okay with this? Vous êtes en accord avec ça?
Je suis d'accord avec ça.
I agree with that.
I have consensus on that. I need to know from everyone. Mr. Green? Okay, and okay, so we're good. So That gives us clear direction. The 30th of April, 2nd and 7th of May, we will be doing the disinformation, misinformation study, and then we will start with the Winnipeg Lab study on the 21st, 23rd, and the 28th of May, just so that everybody's clear. Okay? Good. We have consensus. Thank you for that. Mr. Cooper, I saw that you had something that you wanted to discuss with the committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I will be moving a motion in light of the shocking report in the Globe and Mail of the criminal leak of classified information by a top Liberal connected to the Prime Minister that resulted in the member for Don Valley North being tipped off that he was being monitored by CSIS. So I will now read the motion, and I have some comments to make with regards to the motion. So the motion that I move is as follows.
Point of order, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Ms. Romano.
My apologies. I'm subbing in. Is it possible to receive a copy in both official languages so I could follow along?
Right.
Thank you.
I'll let him move the motion. I'll let him move the motion, and then
on that point of order, Chair.
go ahead.
So we've got some parachutes have just landed in the room, and it's customary.
Excuse
for
me. Are
members-
you referring to me as a parachute?
It's customary.
That is very disrespectful.
So is interrupting people, Sherry. It's customary.
I
for
have the
members-
floor. I have a
You
point
do
of
not-
order
no, you do
before
not
the
have a-
chair
you do-
asking for
you
a
do-
copy of the motion.
He gave me the floor.
Just hang on a sec, Michael.
This is not how this works, Chair. You recognized me, and so I'm going to finish my point of order. The point of order is that it is a practice now where Liberal members look to interrupt Conservatives when they have the floor. And Mr. Cooper hasn't even moved his motion, and they're already trying to silence him and shut him down when he's looking to move the motion.
Okay,
so
thank you.
they've created great disorder.
Thank you,
They've
Mr.
created
Barrett.
great disorder.
I'm going to ask that everybody just calm down here. Mr. Cooper has the floor. I appreciate your point of order. I'm going to ask Mr. Cooper, once he moves that motion, to make sure that the clerk has a copy of the motion in both official languages. Okay, so just to be clear. Mr. Cooper, go ahead with your motion.
So the motion is as follows, Mr. Chair. Given that media reporting states that a Liberal Party member informed the Liberal candidate for Don Valley North that he was the subject of a CSIS investigation in 2019, and that this information could only be obtained from classified national security briefings, with the leak undermining the work of Canada's intelligence agency and violating Canada's national security laws, and that since only select individuals in the Liberal government and Liberal Party would have received this classified information from CSIS and would have been responsible for sharing this information, the committee called the following witnesses: National Director of the Liberal Party, Liberal Designate for the Site Task Force, Azam Ismail, Liberal Designate for Site Task Force, Braden Cayley, Liberal Designate for Site Task Force, Matthew LaFrance, Liberal Campaign Director, Jeremy Broadhurst, former Chief of Staff to the Minister of Public Safety, Marcy Sirks, former Chief of Staff to the Minister of Public Safety, Zita Estravas, former Chief of Staff to the Minister of Democratic Institutions, Rob Jameson, Deputy Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister, Brian Clow, Director of CSIS, David Vineau, a Commissioner of the RCMP, Michael Duhem, National Security and Intelligence Advisor to the Prime Minister, Natalie Drouin, and other witnesses deemed relevant by the committee.
Thank you.
Motion.
That's fine. I want to make sure, so thank you for the motion, Mr. Cooper. I'm going to rule that the motion is in order. We are in committee business. I want to make sure, to be fair to the other members of the committee, that they have a copy of it in both official languages. I understand that the clerk, you're working on that right now?
Yes, I sent
Okay.
it to translation.
So when we come back, I'm going to give you the floor. Mr. Cooper, I'm going to suspend for a couple of minutes to ensure that all members have a copy of it, okay? Thank you. So the meeting's suspended. to order. The translated copy of the motion has been shared among members of the committee. And just for the benefit of the committee, when we're dealing with motions that are going to be moved, as a matter of courtesy, I would like, as the chair, and I know the clerk would as well, that they're received in both official languages, because we just, 25 minutes of our time was just spent translating this document. So before we begin the discussion, I want to make sure that everybody is aware that any discussions are going to go through the chair. No cross-floor discussions at all. And we're going to deal with the discussion on the motion at hand. So any disruptions with respect to a point of order, just because you don't like what somebody is saying, will not be tolerated by the chair. And so I am asking, if you're going to initiate a point of order, state succinctly with respect to the standing orders what point of order you're raising. And I'm going to ask, I'm not going to let this meeting descend into chaos. I'm asking that everybody act like adults, because if there is significant disruption, I will suspend the meeting. So with that, we're going to discuss the motion as presented by Mr. Cooper. I have a list. Mr. Cooper is going to go first. Mr. Brock. I saw Mr. Fisher's hand, and I saw Mr. Baines's hand as well. That will be the order in which we have a discussion. Mr. Cooper, you have the floor. Go ahead.
Point of order.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Gerritsen. Yes, you have a point of order. Go.
So succinctly, as per your direction, Mr. Chair, I'm referring to Standing Order 108, subsection 3, subsection H. Again, if you're going to look that up, it's 108.3H. And it specifically says that the committee's mandate is to study matters related to reports of the Office of the Information Commissioner of Canada, the Office of the Privacy Commissioner of Canada, the Office of the Commissioner of Lobbying of Canada, and the Office of the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner pursuant to the Conflict of Interest Act. Matters related to the Conflict of Interest Code for members of the House of Commons are studied by the House of Commons Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs. It actually puts that part in parentheses. It goes on to say the committee can also study any legislation or regulation or propose initiatives that relate to access to information and privacy and ethical standards relating to public office holders. So what I am suggesting to you, Mr. Chair, is that this motion is out of order because it does not fall under the mandate of the committee. And this issue is actually currently being studied at PROC, where Mr. Cooper, Ms. Romanato, and I sit. I mean, if we almost have more PROC members here than we do ethics, to be completely honest. And I would encourage this discussion and study to continue on in the place where Mr. Cooper himself, who isn't a member of this committee either, moved that in PROC. So I would suggest to you that based on what I said, based on the standing order that I referenced that you requested, this motion is not in order and you should rule it out of order.
I appreciate that, Mr. Gerritsen, that intervention. I did rule that the motion was in order for several reasons, not the least of which is the what I consider to be the mandate of the committee, access to information, privacy, and ethics. I also ruled on the basis that our committee did study foreign interference and presented a report to Parliament, and I believe that this is an issue that is within the mandate of the committee. So I appreciate your point of order. Go ahead, Mr. Cooper, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry. I had mentioned to you I may have something to supplement before.
I did not hear that, Mr. Housefather.
Sorry, I had done that before, but
okay, I didn't hear that.
Of course.
So, are you rising on a point of order?
Yeah, okay. I had just a small supplement to the point made by Mr. Gerritsen, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
There's no allegation in this motion of foreign interference, nor is there any allegation related to the ethical standards related to public office holders. If there is any ethical violation, it would be by a non-public office holder. So again, Mr. Chair, I respectfully would request that you identify what within the mandate of the committee actually relates to the motion proposed by Mr. Cooper. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Yep. So I appreciate, again, that. I think I've stated within the mandate of the committee and the history of the committee my ruling on that. I have ruled on it, Mr. Housefather. If you have a issue with that, I certainly invite you to challenge the ruling. But in the absence of that, I'm going to go to Mr. Cooper. He has the floor. Go ahead, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. For years, the Prime Minister has attempted to cover up his knowledge of Beijing's interference in our elections, interference that benefited himself and the Liberal Party, as well as attempting to cover up and misstate the facts about what he knew and what Beijing did to support the candidacy of the now sitting member for Don Valley North, who the Prime Minister touted was a member of his team, interference that Beijing engaged in to advance Beijing's interests and also benefit the Prime Minister. It was confirmed, Mr. Chair, at the public inquiry last week that CSIS had briefed senior Liberal officials that Beijing did in fact interfere in the Liberal nomination in Don Valley North in 2019 to benefit the now member for Don Valley North. And we know that the Prime Minister was informed about the contents of that CSIS briefing. And in the face of the knowledge that the Prime Minister had that Beijing interfered to assist the now member for Don Valley North, then the Liberal candidate for Don Valley North, what did the Prime Minister do? He effectively gave the green light to Beijing's interference. He didn't rescind the nomination. There's nothing to indicate that he made any further inquiries. Instead, he merely shrugged his shoulders, signed off on that compromised candidate, and then attempted to cover it up. And when allegations and intelligence came to light about the activities of Beijing in support of the member for Don Valley North, the Prime Minister called people names. He attempted to misdirect and mislead, and now, of course, we know what it was reported on a year ago, that in fact Beijing did interfere in that nomination for the benefit of the member for Don Valley North. And yesterday, the Globe and Mail reported that the classified information that was provided at that CSIS briefing was illegally leaked. And that resulted in the member for Don Valley North being tipped off that he was being monitored by CSIS. We know that only a handful of top Liberals were at that CSIS briefing. These are amongst the highest ranking officials within the Liberal Party, all of whom are closely connected and associated with the Prime Minister. There were three people, three top Liberals at that CSIS briefing. They were the National Director of the Liberal Party, Azam Ismail, Braden Cayley, and Matthew LaFrance. According to the testimony of one of the Prime Minister's top advisors, Jeremy Broadhurst, when he appeared before the Procedure and House Affairs Committee on April 25th of 2023, Ishmael informed him about the CSIS briefing. Broadhurst did have the requisite security clearance. So we know there were only 4 people, 3 of whom were directly briefed, a 4th who received the details of that briefing, and then we know that the following day, the Prime Minister was briefed by Jeremy Broadhurst. So there were 5 people, 5 top Liberals, including the very top Liberal himself, the Prime Minister, who were briefed and had the details of that classified information. And it is important to emphasize the seriousness of what happened based upon the report in the Globe and Mail. Someone connected to the Prime Minister leaked classified information that consequently disrupted an ongoing CSIS intelligence operation. Someone connected to the Prime Minister, a top Liberal official, compromised the work of CSIS and put the partisan interests of the Liberal Party ahead of Canada's national security.
Unbelievable.
And in so doing, they committed a serious criminal offense. They contravened Section 4 of the Security of Information Act, an offense that is punishable as an indictable offense with a term of imprisonment of up to 14 years. It is about as serious as it gets. Someone, one of those 4 people, the Prime Minister himself, or a select number of chiefs of staff in this Liberal government who would have also had at the time the requisite security clearances, leaked classified information that then undermined and thwarted a CSIS intelligence operation to advance the partisan interests of the Liberal Party and that benefited a hostile foreign state, the Beijing-based communist regime. And so there are questions arising from this that Canadians deserve answers, and that we as parliamentarians have a responsibility on behalf of Canadians to get those answers. As I see it, there are at least 4 questions in the face of this shocking report that need to be answered, and that is, which top Liberal official illegally leaked the classified information? Who's the top Liberal who broke the law? What's the name of that person? Who's the criminal that is associated with the Prime Minister who compromised Canada's national security? Secondly, who tipped off the